There are actually going to be real ramifications based on the group community choices that are made. So that will actually change the direction of the universe.
Cooking now.
It
We're
can either go
cooking
one
now.
way or it can go the other way. So we're actually going to be playing around a lot with ways that players can decide how they want the universe to change.
Okay, so here we are, ISC, and this is called Content Driven. Technically the first ISC, Inside Star Citizen, of the year, I believe. I'm not counting the segments for ships as ISC because that's not traditional. It's not a traditional ISC episode. So without further ado, let's get into this video.
If you watched last week's 3-hour special edition of Star Citizen Live, you heard a lot about the evolution of this year's patches, how often they're going to come out, and how our shows are changing to reflect that. And if you didn't, well, I'm not really going to recap all that here. But this week, we sat down with some of the non-feature folk to talk about the content-driven side of this new initiative.
Oh, look, Perseus. Is that a Perseus? That is a Perseus. First tease, and then the Polaris. It's interesting. Then you got the Star Kit and stuff, dude. This is the I think this is the racing suit, right?
Where did this idea of a content-driven push come from?
Well, as we sort of alluded to in the 1.0 presentation at CitizenCon, there's been a desire to get more emphasis on starting to build the storylines and the characters of Star Citizen Universe and getting them actually in game.
The way the content patches are going to break down are we're ultimately trying to provide new content to you each month. Alongside all of this, we're going to be essentially providing new missions, new events, kind of a lot of what we've done before, but taking it up to the next level.
This was an opportunity to start figuring out ways to engage the players in a growing and expanding storyline.
We're going to be sending you all the way around the verse, doing lots of different varied types of gameplay. You'll still be doing events that are prevalent to a story that we're going to be working on as well.
I got you covered!
As well as new missions that build up the existing roster that we actually have in game already. There will be some content that is only there for a limited amount of time, but ultimately a lot of this content is still going to persist when we hit to Star Citizen 1.0. So we're actually building out the larger content map that exists in the game.
Okay.
On top of that, there's going to be a huge focus now on stability and quality of life too, because we want a stable environment for our developers to work in, but we also want a stable game that's less buggy, less crashes, and much more pleasant for you guys to play day to day.
I mean, I like hearing that, but like, I think my question still is how does that tie into, how do these stories tie into the world? Like, are they actually going to have meaningful impacts? Like, are they going to shape the universe going forward? Because right now they're really just missions that are more complex than the normal daily missions that we have available in the game. You know, multiple phases. I would say a tougher AI. The objectives are usually scaled up, you know, to kind of sort of encourage group play and group activity, but there's a lot of issues on the group play side because of there's just a lot of friction with grouping up with other players as far as like the UI and gameplay features that don't make it easy to find other players in game to group with. Like there's no looking for group tab yet. Like there's no those social tools that they showcase at CitizenCon are still sorely needed for these to be more easily accessible for players who may not be in big orgs, who are very active and, you know, have set schedules and are constantly getting groups of people together to play together. So until they've added a lot of those tools, it's going to be kind of tough for for everyone else to get into these activities pretty easy.
What's the word? Today's been rough.
As far as the structure for how we're going to tell the story, one of the things that we were kind of excited to try for it was actually utilizing a storytelling structure that's usually used in TV shows. Basically, there's usually an A story and a B story that happen within a single episode. If you're Seinfeld, you have a C story as well, because they're just that good. But there's the A story is sort of your primary story, your B story is sort of a supplemental ancillary story that sometimes can feed into it, but sometimes can be standalone. And it's just a way to kind of keep the scenes dynamic and kind of make them feel alive. So what we're trying to do is actually utilize kind of a similar thing, but stretched out over a longer period of time. And the idea being that A, it makes the universe feel bigger. So there's not just one thing happening that's consuming the entire universe. But also, if you're not interested in the A story, if for whatever reason it's not engaging you, you have something else that you can kind of do. So the idea is that hopefully that one of the two stories, hopefully both, but if not, one of the two stories will be fun and exciting and kind of offer a new insight to the Star Citizen universe. Currently, the plan is...
I think I like that, but I think that something that would enhance that is like, with those different, so like you said, the A story, B story, C story, like you could have in a C story or maybe even like a D story more like content that's easier to solo, like, or easier for smaller groups, like 1 to 2, 3 players that they can hop into very quickly, but it wouldn't be too much of a hassle to do by yourself. That still contributes and is still impactful to that overall story. But I still think that the challenge right now is that without, in-game rewards and these narrative events tying directly into the narrative of Pyro and Stanton in a way that we can actually see and feel in the game, the only real people who really benefit from that narrative experience are those who engage in the story. Like, they've got to get to the point where that story spills over into the overall universe. And that's what I mean. Like, how does the story really tie into the world? Like, how do we feel the impact of this story and this narrative as it plays out, even if we aren't playing it directly? Like, we still need to, there still needs to be that interface and that experience with players who are just doing, their regular day-to-day content. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, oh, players need to get attacked by these NPCs or anything, or players, like, but these events need to have a meaningful impact in the universe that others who may not engage in them can still see and experience.
It's actually the A story, we've already started it, and is actually going to be going through September. And then the B story is a little bit smaller, but it starts basically in April and goes on. So it's a multi-month thing. So it goes on till about October. Once this A story and B story kind of resolve themselves, we have a new A story that starts up and a new B story. So we sort of bounce back and forth. So some months we'll have more B story than A story. Some other months we'll have more A story than B story. But it gives us a way to kind of, again, pull in a lot of different facets of the universe, and whether it's gameplay, mission types, ships, and not have to figure out one overarching narrative that somehow encapsulates everything.
This doesn't replace that big storyline that we talked about at CitizenCon.
No, this doesn't replace that, the 1.0 story, but it is actually kind of offering an exciting opportunity to kind of lay the groundwork for that type of storytelling in the game.
Okay.
Save Stanton is an event that spans over a few months, and it is all about a gang that has invaded Stanton. And it's not one of the usual ones either, it's not one of the usual suspects.
So this started in 324, where we made this narrative journey that players will go on.
The big story beat was that there was a new outlaw pack sort of showed up in Stanton's system and was wreaking havoc. They were known as the Slicers, and were launching basically devastating attacks against the local population.
targeting cargo ships, stealing cargo, targeting different locations around stands such as UGFs and outposts, inhabiting them, and also going around stealing sensitive data that the CDF do not want them to have.
The CDF had got all of the players to come and help. After the players sort of stopped them from doing that, the Slicers had showed their power and showed what they was really about and brought in an Idris that players had to try and reclaim off of them.
Yep.
The viciousness of the attacks and the sort of unprovoked aspect of it is just sort of highlighting effectively what the problem is with Pyro, is that you have this sort of lawless haven for outlaws right next door to Stanton, and basically they have the freedom to kind of come and attack when they want to.
So these people just lived in a hole and decided to come to another place and make it a hole?
Some people just love chaos.
With 401, the player will find themselves in Pyro, ready to defend it or attack it. Depending on which one you have chosen, you'll be locked into that faction. So you can choose the Citizens for Prosperity, the Headhunters, or the Frontier Fighters. If you're working for the Citizens of Prosperity, you're doing more aid work. You're there to help people. You're not really doing much combat work. They're trying to make sure everyone survives this by passing out food, water, medical supplies.
They're basically like, we believe that there's good in this system, there are certainly bad elements, but you're just going to exacerbate the problem by trying to solve it with violence.
And the Headhunters are an old-time gang who've lived there for a long time. They know the land, they know the rules, and they're unhappy that these rules are being crossed.
Headhunters would want you in their group because they kick ass and they're fun to hang out with.
So they're on the offensive. They're here and they're going, you're not attacking our home. They're basically going to be just trying to kill the Frontier Fighters. And the Frontier Fighters want everybody dead. They're going nuclear Earth. You will be killing civilians. You will be killing Headhunters. You'll be killing Xenothreat. They don't care who. If you are in Pyro and you're not them, you're dead.
What's up the Frontier Fighters' ass?
A lot of explosives.
They're perfect for someone like the Darklaw. I don't know what that says about him.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do.
Frontier Fighters is basically justice for Stanton.
They just want to live life in Stanton without being interrupted every 5 seconds. They want to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Are you being honest about the Frontier Fighters right now?
No.
All right, so just quick, so this is really a these aren't just missions. This is a full-on narrative campaign within Stanton and Pyro. That's really cool. This is exactly that is what we need. Now, again, I guess once they add systems like Resource Network and Star Sim, where the economy of Stanton and Pyro can really come into play, where like they were saying with the Citizens for Prosperity, you're doing a lot of aid work. Headhunters, you're pretty much on the offensive, trying to push the Frontier Fighters out. And then Frontier Fighters are basically just on a crusade through Pyro. Those actions, these missions that you can take within this campaign and this narrative should really inform and shape the Pyro system and the Stanton system. And that's what I mean by like that tangible impact. Like this thing should affect, certain outpost locations or where you can go and get supplies. Like when all of that actually matters, when it matters where you can get medical supplies or food or fuel or, any of the commodities that we have in game, like there's no real necessity for them. But once we get those systems that will require us to use those things, these types of missions are going to have a direct impact on the greater verse. And in return, it will feel like you are actually accomplishing something if you are able to get these aid supplies through for Citizen of Prosperity. That location, wherever you're delivering it to, actually doesn't have those supplies and they need those supplies, and you're actually the mission is actually affecting the game world. Once we get to that point, like that's when this game really starts to cook.
The Citizens for Prosperity have seemingly found something out, but they're not telling you as an operative exactly what. They are sending you to defend their data runners, and they're trying to get them out of Pyro, and they're asking you to go on the offensive now and attack the Frontier fighters.
I won't last long here.
Which isn't usual for the CFP. They're trying to be more of a peaceful group in this operation, but now they're not. And the Frontier fighters are aware of this data that the CFP have. They have reported that they think it's to do with their attack plan on Pyro. So they're asking their operatives to take out the data runners that the CFP are trying to get out.
I'll cover you.
And also destroy any CFP-controlled servers to make sure that the data is gone and lost for good.
And the headhunters?
Headhunters, again, carrying on their violent approach of sustaining their locations, reclaiming their locations. Where Frontier fighters might have set up, they will go back in and explode every material that they had so they can get their outpost back.
I don't know. Do the outposts actually exchange hands? Like, does ownership change? Because that would be a big deal. These conquest types of missions where you can actually change the location connect. I don't think that's a real thing in the game yet. Technically, I think they have to have these types of missions, and switch ownership, from patch to patch. But I don't think you can change ownership organically yet. But when that comes in, that's going to be a big one too. That's
all this,
major.
You'll learn things.
You might learn a few things about the intentions of each of those factions. You might learn something more about yourself, and what moral choices you decided to make, and ways that us as designers got to clear. At the end of this chapter, this leaves us with the truth of what was really happening, and sets the stage for something more to come. The story doesn't end here.
I'll keep them occupied.
The way that this story ultimately is intending to play out, there are actually going to be real ramifications based on the group community choices that are made. So that will actually change the direction of the universe.
Cooking now.
It can either go one way or
now.
it can go the other way. So we're actually going to be playing around a lot with ways that players can decide how they want the universe to change.
Yes,
so
that's exactly
forward,
what we need.
There's going to be a bit of a twist
yeah.
that comes down the road, which is going to escalate basically the situation into one of our first big events. With this, it basically allows us to plan out a bit more and actually, again, start to build a growing narrative.
Giving players more of a reason to engage and be able to talk to each other and like, hey, where did you get that item from? Oh, well, I was here when this happened, and I was here when this happened. Definable points in our universe's history. It adds to the universe, it adds to the story of it all.
It creates
and it means
life,
that
it makes it feel it's alive.
you as a
The
player
world
help build this world out.
Yeah, it makes the world feel alive,
So I'm really excited about the changes coming in. It's going to allow us to get more fun content in your hands more often. And it's going to provide a much more stable environment for us to work in, but also for you to play in as well.
Up until this point, we've actually been honing in on gameplay mechanics and more kind of under the hood stuff. We have a lot of data pads in the game to kind of do the heavy lifting for storytelling now. This is allowing us to kind of push on those other facets as a way to kind of be higher impact storytelling techniques.
So with a patch almost every month this year, building the narratives of the Stanton and Pyro systems with new content less reliant on big feature work, and packed between as many bug fixes and refinements as we can manage, we aim to deliver a progressive series of improvements in storytelling that will change life in the verse for the better throughout 2025. Oh, and last month, we launched a new bi-monthly Squadron 42 newsletter with exclusive video content, ringtones, wallpapers, and even merch. If you missed it, you can go to the Squadron 42 or account settings sections of the RSI website to opt in and not miss out on the next exclusive offerings. Or don't. I don't get any commission or anything. I just thought the stickers were neat. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the people and process of game development with you, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with a look at Alpha 402, Supply or Die.
Nice. All right, so that was that. Very good episode. That's very exciting, honestly, especially since they're not going to be prioritizing feature work due to the changes in development, and they're wanting to kind of just focus on stabilizing the game that we have, making sure that it's playable, the features and content that are there are stable and playable, reliable, all that jazz, everything, everything that we know, everything they talked about this year so far. So, but it's good to see that this narrative mission is going to basically unfold over the course of the year. That provides, gameplay for those who want to play in the live environment. And if the narrative is really good and the story is really good and you can keep people engaged, like that's definitely something that people are going to want to play and come back to. So I think overall it's a good direction. I think that this is the right thing to do for CIG in a year where we're not going to see a whole lot of new content and new features added, which is something that has been a staple of this game's development since forever. So that was a really good episode, really informative. Definitely gets me a little bit more excited for the content that we will be getting this year. Still a lot of mystery around what features are actually going to be prioritized. So definitely looking forward to hear more about the feature work that's ongoing, and more about how the testing environment is going to be set up, and how the overall plan for the year is going to unfold. But I'm sure as time goes, we'll get more and more information. So yeah, that's all. Definitely looking forward to playing the story now. Definitely more interested in this event, knowing that it's going to take place over the course of months. There's the main story, side stories, and all that jazz, like a real narrative campaign. And the fact that they are aiming to have this impact the overall game is pretty cool. So like, if these decisions in the gameplay actually do change the world and reshape Stanton and Pyro in some way, then that is very exciting. So I hope they can execute on it. I hope it is exciting and engaging content for us to play. And I hope that, again, with the feature work, I hope the social tools are a priority for them this year, so that grouping up with other people is a lot easier. Identifying player allegiances in a way, like right now you don't know who's working for CFP or the other factions unless you are able to communicate with them in game, and a lot of people don't even have mics or don't have their mics on, so you don't know who you're encountering when you show up at a location. So one of the social tools that they showcased was like markers that would indicate what loyalty a certain player has, like who are they working for. So you can see, all right, this person's CFP, this person's headhunters, this person's frontier fighters and you can act accordingly. So that's a feature we absolutely need for something like that, just to make it easier to quickly identify friend or foe. So that's all I got on this episode. What are your thoughts? Can't wait to hear and read. I'll read the comments in the comment section. But yeah, that's it for now. Peace.